Hello everybody, today I will be going over my environment, which is this outside world of the train, and how I created it and some of the things that I can do to change how it looks. So if I click M, I could show you what it looks like while it's moving. So it looks like we're on a high-speed bullet train, and if I click M again, I could stop it, and I could stop the train. And let me show you guys a bit about how this works. So something important to note is that the player never leaves the train. The entire game is set on a train, so um, this camera is a representation of what that will look like for the player because I'm going to be taking you outside of the train to sort of simulate what it looks like, and this is just to kind of bring us back into what it'll actually look like for the player. So um, to give you an overview of this system, think about it like a large-scale asset manager and placement system. It's sort of like a conveyor belt. So I'll simulate this for you, and I'm going to pin this player's perspective to the screen. So the first thing that happens are these lanes spawn, and then items spawn on top of it. And um, it fills up the entire world really quickly, and then you just saw the area shift to this kind of more neutral. This is what it looks like while the train is moving. So items are spawned here at the very beginning, and um, they also this like fragmenting that's happening on the items. That's something that only happens in the editor. In the actual game, all the items look normal. So yeah, when at the very at the start, the items are spawned at the start of the lane. Their transform is gradually incremented until they reach the very end of the lane. In that case, they are removed from the lane and get put back into the item pool for that item so that they could be reused in somewhere else. And that is basically what it is. It's a large conveyor belt, and there's a big manager, which is my outside world, that controls like everything from the speed. It has most of the data in there, and it delegates tasks to these lanes. These are the lanes. And each lane kind of controls its own assets and moving them. They're kind of like my ticks. They're the sub managers that deal with all the ticking things, and the main manager deals with kind of delegating those tasks. So there are two main settings that I created and want to go over. The first one is areas. So areas are kind of a big thing that control how my game kind of behaves. So the first thing actually is items. Each item type is sort of like a broad definition of items. So like for my gas station, right? I have a gas station item type. Each item type is a data asset, and each item type also has individual meshes. So my gas station is an item type, but it actually has 8 types of gas stations, right? So these gas station meshes are actually the same, but they have different custom primitive data for their colors and what they look like. So you could think about each individual item as basically controlling the meshes, right? What meshes spawn, what colors they spawn in, how they look like, that kind of stuff. And then their behavior for where they spawn and their probability and such is dealt with in an area. So an area is defined by how all the items in that area behave, right? So in a city area, for example, which is what we're in right now, um, there's going to be a high probability of these really large skyscrapers, and they're going to be in closer lanes and such like that. But if we were to go into like a countryside area, then there would be a very, very, very low probability, maybe even zero, of like these large skyscrapers spawning, and maybe smaller buildings and stuff like that will be more likely to spawn. And we can also change the distance between them, so there's going to be a lot more empty space in the countryside. Maybe grass is more likely to spawn than asphalt and gravel. So in an area, you could define how items behave. You can also use this for smaller things like tunnels, right? If I wanted a tunnel to appear after cart 5, every time you enter cart 5, there's a tunnel, I can make a trigger to trigger a tunnel area where tunnel probability is 100% and everything else is not. And then a tunnel will always be like 100% likely to spawn when you enter cart 5. So we can get really specific with how the environment reacts to the game with areas. So here's one of my areas. I have my material settings, so I could change the materials, like what lanes they appear in, how likely they are to appear, and I have items, so I could control like my small buildings. They have a 75% chance of appearing. They can spawn in lanes 4, 5, and 6, and they have a minimum of 250 units and a maximum of 10,000 units between each other. So I could control the spacing between them. And they don't have a minute and max delay, but like my gas stations, for example, do, because I don't want them to appear like directly right after each other. So there's a minimum delay in game time that the next one can appear. So yeah, this is sort of how my areas work. And another thing they control are the speed. So my next thing to talk about is my speed curve. So before we go into that, I want to sort of explain how this works. So imagine where the train is at lane 0, right here. Imagine this as our 0. And all the way the furthest point from my train on either side is my max distance away. Think of this as like my 1. So everything in the middle here is plotted on a graph of 0 to 1. So something here like directly in the middle, we could say its ratio is 0.5. It's 50% distance away from the train. This is 100% distance away from the train, right? So everything is given its a ratio based on its distance from the train. So if I pull out my speed graph here, over here on this side, the y is that ratio, right? So if something is 50% distance away from the train, it's 0.5. And then over here on the bottom is its correlated speed factor. So I can say if something is at 0.8, right, if I wanted to move it all the way to the here, it is going at 0.8 and it's going at full speed if it's at 1, right? If I wanted to go at less speed, right, so this is 0. If I wanted to go at 0 speed, if it's super far away, I would move this down to 0, right? So this is how I'm controlling the curve of my speed. And there are also a few other settings I can change to control the curve. So the outside world has also a max speed factor, because I noticed that things that were 100% distance away were going at 0 speed. So this is the lowest the speed can get. So if I wanted to make the train slower than it is right now, I can make this like 0.2, so that the max is 20% of the current speed. And I can go into my area. I can make this maybe something like 800 speed instead of 1500. And I can control this so that there's like a super sharp fall off here. So I could say, all right, the items that are pretty close to the train here are going to go nearly at max speed, and they're going to have a very sharp fall off, and then items are going to slowly decrease in speed after that. So something like that. Let me go back to the camera. So we have the visual of what it looks like to the player. And we can also see the area transition here. So we have a fill area that will just go super fast and fill the entire world, and then it'll transition into the start area. So this is the fill area. We didn't edit that at all. And then we'll see a slow shift. And now this area is going really fast. Also the start area, the parallax flips because the further lanes tend to be a lot bigger. So I want them to fill quicker. So as you can see here, the close lanes are going super, super quickly, and then there's like a sharp decrease over here, and then everything here is slowly incrementing or decrementing in speed. So that's how it works, and I can control my speed curve like that, and I control what my areas look like and how the outside world reacts to the environment and the gameplay. And yeah, this is an overview of my system and how it works. From the train, again, it looks like this. I can take you to the front. That's probably the coolest view of the train. And this is what the items look like. This is what the areas look like. The game looks like this. And thank you for watching. I have a more detailed overview of how the code works and how all my data is stored and such like that in my website if you're curious to listen to that or read it. And I'd also be happy to answer any questions. So please let me know. Thank you very much for watching.